She's unstable. She's always been unstable. And now she's dragging my son-in-law into her delusions because she can't handle the fact that she has nothing. That was my mother-in-law speaking to my family's lawyer 3 weeks before my daughter's 5th birthday. I was sitting 2 chairs away from her. I didn't say a word. I want to start there because I think it matters. The fact that I said nothing. People always expect the wronged party to cry, or to yell, or to crumble. I've learned that the most powerful thing you can do when someone is dismantling your reputation in front of a room full of people is to sit very still and let them finish. Let them show everyone exactly who they are. My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm 31 years old, I have a daughter named Lily, and for the better part of 3 years, I let my husband's family convince me that I was the problem. I met my husband at a university orientation in Halifax. We were both in the Faculty of Business, both from small towns, both completely overwhelmed by the city. He was kind then, thoughtful. He'd leave notes on my textbooks and call when he said he would. We got married young. I was 24, and I thought that was the beginning of something good. It wasn't until after the wedding that I started noticing things. The way his mother would look at me when I spoke at the dinner table. The way my father-in-law would redirect conversations so that my opinion was never quite the last one heard. Small things. The kind of things that make you feel like you're losing your mind a little bit because there's nothing concrete to point to, just this constant low hum of being made to feel like a guest in your own family. My husband never defended me. Not once, not loudly. He'd say things like, "She doesn't mean it that way," or "You're too sensitive about stuff like this." I believed him for longer than I should have. Lily was born in March, 2 years into the marriage. She had my eyes and her father's nose, and this little crease between her eyebrows when she was thinking hard about something. She was the best thing that had ever happened to me, and for a while she was enough to hold everything together. By the time Lily was 3, the marriage was collapsing under its own weight. My husband had started spending most weekends at his parents' place in Moncton, 4 hours away, and coming back shorter-tempered and more dismissive each time. I found out later, through a text I wasn't supposed to see, that his mother had been telling him for years that I was holding him back, that he deserved more, that I'd trapped him with the pregnancy. I didn't make a scene about the text. I just took a photo of it on my phone, saved it to a cloud folder, and started paying closer attention. Over the next 6 months, I documented everything, not because I'm naturally calculating. I'm not. I'm actually someone who hates conflict, who would rather apologize for something that wasn't my fault than watch a room go uncomfortable. But I had Lily, and when you have a child, something shifts in you. The version of you that would have quietly accepted being pushed out stops existing. A different version takes over. I'd been working part-time as an architectural technologist since Lily was born, doing contract work from home while managing everything in the house. What my husband's family didn't know, what my husband barely knew, was that the contract work had grown significantly. I'd taken on a long-term project with a firm in Toronto, then a second one with a municipal client in New Brunswick. By the time I was having that quiet crisis in my living room, filing folders on my laptop, I was billing close to $90,000 a year and had a full-time offer sitting in my inbox that I hadn't told anyone about yet. I took the offer. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't tell his mother. I accepted, arranged to work remotely from Halifax, and quietly started separating our finances into accounts only I could access. I spoke to a family lawyer in Halifax, a woman I'll call my lawyer because that's all she needs to be, and I started understanding what my rights were. In Nova Scotia, when a marriage breaks down, the matrimonial home and any family property is subject to equal division unless certain conditions apply. I knew the house. I knew the mortgage. I knew what had been paid with my money and what hadn't. My lawyer knew it too. Lily turned 4. Her father's family sent a card with $20 in it and did not come to the party. I remember sitting on the back steps of our house after everyone had left, Lily asleep on the couch with icing on her chin, and thinking about that $20, about how they'd driven past Halifax the weekend before to go to some wine event in Wolfville and hadn't stopped, about how my mother-in-law had texted me that morning to say, "Happy birthday to the little one," without even writing Lily's name. I didn't cry. I was past crying by then. I filed for divorce in October. My husband did not take it well. He drove up from Moncton the same day his lawyer called him and sat in our kitchen and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that I was going to lose everything, that his family had people. He actually said that we have people who would make sure I left with nothing. I made him a cup of tea. I slid it across the counter to him, and I said, very calmly, "I think you should talk to your lawyer before you say anything else." He left 2 hours later. I locked the door and called my lawyer. The next 4 months were some of the hardest of my life. And I want to be honest about that because this isn't a story where everything is clean and empowering every minute. Some nights, I put Lily to bed and sat in the bathroom on the cold tile floor and just held my own knees because I didn't know what else to do. I was scared, not of the outcome. I knew the outcome, but of the process. Of having to sit across from people who had never seen me as a real person and watch them try to reduce me to a number. My husband's family hired an aggressive lawyer out of Fredericton. His mother submitted a personal statement to the court that characterized me as financially irresponsible, emotionally volatile, and, her word, parasitic. She claimed I had contributed nothing to the marriage and had isolated her son from his family. She cited as evidence the fact that I had refused to attend a family Christmas 2 years earlier. What she did not mention was that I had been 6 weeks postpartum and had a fever of 39.2, and my husband had still left for Moncton on the 23rd without us. My lawyer had the hospital records. She had a lot of things. The mediation meeting happened on a Tuesday in February in a boardroom in downtown Halifax with a view of the harbor that I remember very clearly because I kept looking at it when I needed to feel grounded. My mother-in-law was not supposed to be there. Mediation is between the two parties, but she'd driven up with my husband and was sitting in the waiting area when I arrived, in a white blazer with a look on her face like she was attending something she'd already won. She stopped me in the hallway. "You should know," she said, keeping her voice low, "that what you're doing to this family is unforgivable. You can take whatever the court gives you, but you will never have our support. You will never have his family, and that little girl is going to grow up knowing exactly what her mother did." I looked at her for a moment, long enough that she started to look slightly less sure of herself. "Okay," I said. And I walked into the boardroom. I don't know exactly what my mother-in-law expected to happen in that mediation. I think she expected me to be desperate, unprepared, emotional in the way she'd always dismissed me as emotional. What she didn't expect was the binder my lawyer placed on the table, 63 pages of financial documentation, property records, income history, and correspondence. She didn't expect the full-time employment contract I'd been holding for 4 months. She didn't expect the independent property valuation that had been done our house, or the accounting summary showing how much of the mortgage had been paid from my personal earnings while my husband's income had largely gone toward his own expenses and his family's various requests. There had been a period, about 18 months into the marriage, when my husband's family was having what they describe as a cash flow issue. His parents had asked him, really, but it became us, for a bridge to cover some expenses while they sorted out a property dispute. The amount was $42,000. My husband had transferred it from our joint account. My lawyer had the transfer record. She also had the text exchange in which my mother-in-law, 9 months after the transfer, had told my husband not to tell me about the second part. There had been a second part, $18,000, transferred from an account that was technically both of ours to a numbered company registered to my father-in-law. I had not known about the second part until my lawyer found it. The mediator, a quiet man in his 60s who had barely spoken for the first 40 minutes, looked up from the document my lawyer had just passed him and said, carefully, "And the respondent was not a party to this second transaction." My lawyer said no. He looked at my husband. My husband looked at the table. I looked at the harbor. The mediation did not resolve that day, but it shifted everything. The aggressive posture from the other side went quiet. The counter-proposals that had been arriving daily from their lawyer slowed, then stopped. 3 weeks later, a new proposal came through that gave me the house, primary residency of Lily, a structured support arrangement, and a formal acknowledgement, a rare thing, apparently, that the $60,000 transferred from marital assets without my consent would be factored into the settlement as debt owed to me. I did not celebrate. I signed the documents, had my lawyer file them, and drove to Lily's daycare in the middle of the afternoon to pick her up early. I took her to Point Pleasant Park and we walked along the water and she picked up every interesting rock she found and put them in my jacket pocket until I was walking sideways with the weight of them. On the drive home, she asked me if Daddy's family was ever going to come to her birthday. I thought about what to say for a long moment. "I don't know, sweetheart," I told her, "but I know who is. Grandma is coming, Aunt Fiona is coming, all the people who love you most are coming, and we're going to have the best cake." She thought about this. "Can it be strawberry?" "It can absolutely be strawberry." She turned back to the window, satisfied, and held a gray piece of granite in both hands like it was precious. Lily's 5th birthday was in March. My mother made the cake, 3 layers, strawberry buttercream, a little fondant flour on top, because Lily had specifically requested a flower. My sister drove in from Truro. My college roommate came with her twins. Our neighbor from down the street brought a balloon bouquet and her golden retriever, which Lily has been in love with since she was 2. My husband's family sent nothing. No card, no call, no text. I noticed and then I let it go. What I did send, 2 days before the birthday, was a letter, not to my husband, we were communicating through lawyers by then, but to my mother-in-law directly. It was a single page, typed formal. It referenced the settlement and the amount acknowledged as transferred without consent, and it enclosed as a symbolic first installment a check for $1. My lawyer had suggested it. It was technically within the settlement terms, which allowed for payment in installments, provided the first installment was made within 30 days, $1 counted. It started the clock on the formal repayment schedule. More importantly, it put on record that I was not going to quietly absorb what had been taken and move on. Every subsequent payment would now be documented. Every penny would be tracked. It would be years before the debt was settled. My father-in-law's company had already started restructuring, but the paper trail was now immaculate and irrefutable. My mother-in-law called my husband screaming, apparently. I know this because he forwarded me her voicemail by accident. Old habits, maybe. He used to do that sometimes when his family did something he knew was indefensible. I don't think he even realized he'd sent it. I listened to it once, then I saved it to the same cloud folder as everything else. There was a moment at Lily's party, near the end, after the cake, when most of the adults were sitting in the living room and the kids were running in the backyard, when my sister came and sat beside me on the couch. She didn't say anything for a minute. Just put her hand over mine. "You good?" she said. I thought about it honestly, the way you do when someone who actually knows you asks. "Yeah," I said. "I actually think I am." She squeezed my hand. Outside, Lily was chasing the golden retriever around the yard, laughing so hard she kept tripping over her own feet. I'm not going to tell you that what my husband's family did to me was something I've forgiven, because I haven't. I don't think forgiveness is owed on any particular timeline, and I'm suspicious of stories that wrap up with the protagonist releasing everyone and floating peacefully into the future. That's not how it actually works. What I can tell you is that the anger I used to carry, the low-grade, constant, humiliating anger of being dismissed, is mostly gone, replaced by something more useful. Clarity, maybe. A very precise understanding of who I am and what I can do and what I will not accept. The full-time position turned into something larger. By the spring, I was managing a team of 5 on a provincial infrastructure project, and there were conversations happening about a permanent director role. I'd repainted Lily's room the color she picked, a very intense yellow that I personally find a bit much, but she loves it, and we'd gotten a fish tank because she'd asked for one. And most mornings, I drove her to school and then came home and made coffee and sat at my desk in a quiet house and thought, with something close to disbelief, that this is mine. The settlement repayments come in irregularly, and my lawyer sends a reminder each time the schedule is missed. My father-in-law's numbered company is in the middle of a CRA review, which my lawyer was careful to note is entirely unrelated to our settlement, but which is worth being aware of. My husband has Lily every other weekend and 3 weeks in the summer. She comes home talking about the places they've gone, the things they've done. I'm glad she has a relationship with him. I'll never stop being glad about that. His mother, I'm told, has not asked about Lily in months. Lily doesn't ask about her either. She's 5. She knows who shows up. Last week, she brought home a card she'd made at school, construction paper, and too much glue, with a drawing of 2 people holding hands and "me and mommy" written in large, uneven letters across the top. She handed it to me like it was the most natural thing in the world and went to feed the fish. I held it for a long time. You can be dismissed by people your whole life. You can be called unstable, parasitic, delusional. You can watch someone transfer $60,000 out of your shared life and then sit in a boardroom and pretend it was nothing. All of that can happen. And then you can build something so solid, so documented, so undeniably yours that the only thing left to do is stand in your own kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon holding a construction paper card with too much glue on it and know that you won. I keep thinking about that card Lily made. Construction paper, too much glue, her name spelled in letters that tilted slightly downhill. She handed it to me like it was nothing, the most natural gesture in the world, and then walked away to feed the fish. She didn't wait for my reaction. She didn't need to. She just knew. I think about what it cost me to get to that Tuesday afternoon in my kitchen. Not the legal fees, not the months of documentation, not the hours sitting with my lawyer going through transfer records line by line. I mean what it actually cost. The version of me that used to shrink when my mother-in-law walked into a room. The version that apologized reflexively, that second-guessed every instinct, that confused keeping the peace with being at peace. That version is gone. I don't mourn her, but I don't pretend she didn't exist either. What I've come to understand is that the outcomes in my life didn't change because I got lucky, or because the right person finally saw through the right document. They changed because of choices I made when I was scared and nobody was watching. Accepting that job offer and telling no one. Opening a separate account on a Wednesday morning while Lily napped. Calling a lawyer before I was ready, before I was sure, before I felt like I had any ground to stand on. Those weren't dramatic moments. They were quiet ones. And they were the whole story. There's something I want to say about integrity, because I think it's the most misunderstood word in situations like mine. Integrity isn't about being the bigger person or rising above. It's about being honest, with yourself first, then with everyone else, even when dishonesty would be easier and no one would know. When I found that transfer record, I could have buried it, used it privately as leverage, and never put it in a legal document. But I didn't, because that's not who I am, and more importantly, it's not who I want Lily to see. She is watching everything. She always has been. That matters more than winning. The intelligence piece, And I mean that in the oldest sense of the word, the capacity to understand what's actually happening rather than what you're being told is happening, that came slowly. It came from paying attention when everyone assumed I wasn't. It came from keeping records when people assumed I was too overwhelmed to bother. Nobody in that mediation room expected a 63-page binder. They had counted on me being the version of myself I used to perform for them. I had quietly stopped performing it years before they noticed. And the perseverance? Getting through the nights on the bathroom floor, getting up the next morning, making Lily's lunch, sitting back down at the desk. That wasn't strength in any heroic sense. It was just the refusal to stop. One more day, one more document, one more question to my lawyer. That's all it ever was. Lily asked me last week if we could get a second fish. I said yes. She named it after her favorite color, which is currently orange, so the fish is named Orange. She was extremely pleased with this. I thought, this is what I was protecting. Not a settlement number, not a house, not a point proven in a boardroom with a harbor view. This. A kid who names her fish Orange and hands you construction paper cards without waiting to see if you cry. It was always worth it.